because for decades we've been talking about the problem of climate change, global warming, what it means for our society, and what the kinds of actions that are required to address it. And here we are in 2016, and we're continuing to emit fossil fuel emissions that are continuing to make this problem much worse. And so I think it's become apparent, and increasingly more apparent in the scientific community and in society at large, that we need more than just information and data to address this problem. Of course, we absolutely need science, we absolutely need information. If we didn't have science, we wouldn't understand why the climate is changing, we wouldn't understand what we should do about it. But we do have that information. What's missing is a visceral understanding, a narrative, something that, for that information to fit into, that engages our whole minds and emotions and bodies in a more meaningful way. And we really hope that what we're doing here by using music to express the climate information, that we're doing that. So, and it's not just a literal translation of data into sound. That wouldn't be music, that would be interesting, and it might be an intuitive way to understand the information, but this is really a collaboration with artists. It's a collaboration with Eric, Ian Walker, the composer. So what you're going to hear is, as Stefan said, a collision of the data with Eric's creative understanding of what the data means, influenced by his ideas of what that means and the conversations that we had that led up to the composition. So the data drives certain aspects of it. The data is a hard score that drives certain aspects of the music. So for instance, carbon dioxide, principal greenhouse gas that is causing climate change, drives the tempo in the music. And actually at this point, maybe if you feel compelled to, you can look at your program on, I think it's page 5. You're going about 3 pages on the left. There's some data graphs, and we're going to see this data evolve as the music evolves. And I'm just going to explain briefly what each of these variables are. So the first one is carbon dioxide. And as I mentioned, that's the principal greenhouse gas. It's a tasteless, odorless gas that is the product of burning things. And human beings are burning lots of fossil fuels, and we're increasing carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere. That gas, in turn, traps heat in the atmosphere, which is causing temperature to go up, which is the second graph. So that's the global mean temperature. And the reason the temperature goes up is because it's trapping energy. And so the third graph is the Earth's energy balance. That's the amount of sunlight that's coming in from space that stays, the amount of net energy that's staying here on Earth. So that third one has caused some confusion with past audiences. One way to think of it is it's the rate of change. So when that number is positive, the planet is warming. So CO2 drives this up, and then as temperature goes up, it brings it back down. And so as long as that number is positive, it continues to warm. So a couple things to pay attention to. One is variability. There's natural variability in the Earth system, and as you can see, the data have wiggles and turns and things like that. Some of the more dramatic sources of variability you'll notice in 1883, if you pay attention, there's a volcanic eruption, the Krakatoa erupts, the Earth's energy balance drops, and the temperature drops briefly, but then comes back within a couple of years. So that variability is natural, and you can see for those different variables, there's a different level of natural variability. Another thing to pay attention to is time lags. So CO2 goes up initially, that drives the Earth's energy balance out of equilibrium, and then that in turn causes the temperature to rise, and the temperature rising causes the energy balance to come back. So there are delays in the system, and that's part of the challenge of what we're facing, is that our actions today are going to continue to warm the planet for decades to centuries to millennia. So those time lags are an important piece of this. And then the third thing to pay attention to is just the overall scale of change between these different scenarios. So we're going to follow history from 1800 up to 2005, and then from 2005 we split into 2 scenarios. One scenario is sort of our best case that we can hope for at this point, which is what the recent Paris agreements put us on track towards, that the goal, internationally agreed upon goal, is to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. So that lower blue curve represents that better pathway. It's still a significant change from the past, but it's in comparison to the other pathway, the one in which we might call it business as usual, where we continue to emit fossil fuels without any limitation whatsoever, is a much more severe world that goes up to 8 or 9 degrees Celsius. So that's the third thing to pay attention to, is the scale of change in these different scenarios. And the music will mostly follow that more severe scenario, but there'll be moments where we flash back to what we call the blue planet, this 2-degree world. So you can listen for that in music and see if you can tell when we're going from the business as usual world to the blue planet world. So with that, there's a brief video that explains a little bit more about how the music was created, and then we'll actually get to experience this. Thanks.